Yo, what is going on, everybody? It is your boy Sonny here, coming at you guys with another Neverwinter video. And by the title and thumbnail, you already know why you clicked on. We are finally bringing you guys my Mod 18 tank barbarian build. Now, this has been a work in progress. Definitely a struggle to get all the appropriate stat caps, make sure we maintain maximum health and incoming healing. So yeah, this build is definitely more orientated towards the end game players, because you definitely need a couple pieces that that obviously you won't be able to get, but at the same time, it could be something you work towards. The main thing on a tank is just making sure you guys are reaching the stat caps. That's probably one of the most hardest things, by also balancing your HP and incoming healing as well. So there's a lot to go on with the tank, but enough chit chat, let's just jump straight into it. We're going to go through the gear pretty quickly, just because of the fact is gear can come down to a lot of different pieces. Maybe the only one piece of gear that I would say you might want to get is the Shielded Defender Van Braces, and this is just because it gives you a 5% damage resistance. In terms of the arm, head, and feet, I kind of just went with the 12-25 pieces, whatever stats I needed, like right here, armor pen com, critical avoidance accuracy, and then this gives critical combat advantage. So in terms of that, just kind of pick whatever gear you need for stats. For modifications, we went with hit points, utilities, tacticals all day, every day, in all 5. For the armor enchantment, we have Elven Battle. For defensive slots, all radiance, nothing else, strictly radiance in the defense. In terms of my weapon set, I have the Lionheart. I'm lucky enough. If you don't, use whatever set you have. The main thing is weapon enchantment. There's a couple that I would go with a tank. Bronzewood is probably the best debuff one out there. Lightning is good for holding aggro, that's why I use it, and I also, main my barbarian damage, so it kind of works out both on classes. In terms of modifications to the offhand, you're definitely going to want to go with health and income and healing. And for the main hand, you just probably want to go with either Sure Strike or Challenger Slash. Those are the two that we mainly use. Challenger Slash is the one we use majority of the time, so I'd probably go with this one just to get that extra 10% damage on it. I don't have that spec just because, like I said, I don't run tank primarily, so it's nice, that's another completely different thing. Moving on, I use 3 journals, right? I use the journals just due to the fact is these give you the most amount of HP in terms of artifacts, and I don't need anything else from my artifacts. We have the Hallister's Blast Scepter, because we do use the 3-piece set from it, because we get the the Mad Dash. When you stand still for 3 seconds, your movement speed and damage is increased by 5%. As a tank, sometimes we're just chilling in one spot for quite a while, and being able to do extra damage and hold that aggro, it's just nice. Shirt and pants, I got the new ones. Whatever statue you're lacking, just pick it up, okay? For the rings, I went with the nickel-plated rings just because of the armor pen and critical strike, as well as your encounter powers will do 3% more damage, which is awesome because as a barbarian, our encounter powers are our way of building up that aggro. So if we're doing extra damage on those, beautiful. It's just icing on the cake. In terms of offensive slots, there's a little bit of mixture. I have the Tenebrous, I have some Azores, I have Radiance, and then I even have the Fire just to help out with the stat balance. And for the right side, for the modifications, you can use either, stamina regen or combat advantage, whatever one you prefer. Moving on to, the ability score, we went with strength and dex, critical severity and movement speed. And for strength, stamina, regeneration, and physical damage boost, you can put con and strength, or, maybe, yeah, that'd be the only one I would say. Con and strength maybe, or charisma. But truthfully, I just like dex for movement speed. Being a tank, I like to be the first ones at the group at all times, just so I can get that threat build up first. Because as a barbarian, I don't want to say it's a little bit harder to maintain aggro, but we definitely want to make sure that we grab the aggro first before those heavy hitters come, because then it's sometimes a problem. As you guys can see, my stats right here, I have 777 HP, so it's beautiful. Power is nice. Armor pen capped, defense capped, crit strike, critical avoidance, accuracy. Deflect is practically capped, and combat advantage is at 70k. My income and healing is at 39. This can bump up to 46 once I max out my utility slot, so I'm not really sweating it that much. The big thing is, guys, making sure you're, capping the stats. The big one you want is all of them to be capped, but the last one probably you want to cap if you had to pick would be critical strike. Not to say that you don't want this capped, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know what I mean? But definitely accuracy you want, deflect, armor pen for sure, because you don't want that undercapped. You're just going to be losing way too much damage there. So that is the big one. Moving on to powers. For the feats, leap into action, might, indomitable might, disarm and takedown, crush and advance, and extended unstoppable. You can use on the move, not so fast. That increases allies' movement speed by 20% for 4 seconds. I barely even use disarming takedown, to be honest. I usually just run these 3 encounters all the time just because I like to maintain aggro the entire dungeon. Even on boss fights, I found these 3 encounter powers work wonderful even in the bosses. So that is why I just use these constantly. Maybe you feel, well, you don't need Mighty Leap or whatever the case is and you want to give more debuff, then by all means use takedown on the bosses. It's just all preference. In terms of class features, I use Challenger's Charge and Threaten and Presence. That is why I use Punish and Charge all the time, just because whatever target we hit, we get on the top of the threat list. This should be a no-brainer for a boss. You can use Mighty Vitality instead of the Challenger's Charge, and just swap these around during boss fights and AoE. But the only problem is Mighty Vitality at the moment is kind of busted. It literally gives me like 6k HP. And for me, 6k HP, it's not worth it. Then I have to, during every boss fight or every intermission, I got to sit here and change. And so if, God forbid, I forget to change and I don't have this on the top of my threat list, I'm going to be like, bro, why can't I keep aggro? And then that's a wipe right there. So, for me, it's not even worth it. Maybe once they fix it, I'll put it on. But, where my hit points even stand at now, it's not really that big of a deal because we lose 5% power as well. And, a lot of people sleep on it, but maintaining damage as a tank just makes life easier. So just remember that. Having power, having your stats capped, having that combat advantage is all key to maintaining a good tank. In terms of at wills, I have Challenger Slash and Sure Strike. I use Challenger Slash probably 99% of the time just because it increases our threat. So I'll just sit there and spam that. In terms of boons, the big ones you want to go for: Power, HP, Marathon Runner, Companion Influence, Income and Healing. The other one I went with is Second Wind for the stamina regen. You can go with Action Point Gain. You can go Recharge Speed. That one's all debatable. In terms of the Master Boon, I went with the Focus Retaliation. You could use Bloodlust as well. The only reason why I like the Focus Retaliation is because it gives a nice debuff. 1500 armor pen to decrease target's armor penetration by 15, decrease target's accuracy, which isn't a big deal, but then mirror all income and damage back to the attacker at rank 3, which is nice. So it's just a bit of damage right there as well. For Stronghold, we went with the Power Boon, hit points, and utility. It doesn't really matter. Companions, we used the Bullet Pup just due to the fact is of the stats it gives you, right? It gives bonus to combat advantage, defense, and power. Those are the main things that I'm going for, especially combat advantage. Now, there are other options out there, but, my Bullet Pup is already legendary, and it just works out well. In terms of enchantment, I go with Redemption, but maybe you feel you don't even need Redemption, your group is tanking, and you want to provide another debuff, then put on Armor Break. This reduces the enemy's defense by up to 2,000. I'll usually use this on boss fights, depending on the group itself. Bonding should always be 15. Those are the first things you want maxed. In terms of gear, I don't have anything in my defensive slot just because I don't need anything. My defense, everything is capped. There's no point in overcapping it. It doesn't give you anything. Maybe you could be like, well, when you die, you do lose a couple of stats, but I'm out here not trying to die. So your boy Sonny's thinking like that. I'm not trying to go down. But, it does happen. So you could potentially put more defense, more critical, more deflect in here. The only thing you can't get is hit points. And then I have accuracy, right? Just to help out. 12k accuracy, critical avoidance deflection, defense deflection. This is all going to be different for everybody unless you're taking my shit exactly down to a T. Like I said, the big thing is just meeting those stat caps. But hey, if you can follow my build down to the T, that's just better for you because it's going to work. In terms of companions, this is where things get really expensive. We use the Skeleton Dog. We use the Rimfire Golem, the Moonshay. This is, you know, this is an expensive companion, but the dragons, and then the Zuna for the 32,000 HP. This helps with income and healing, maximum hit points. As you can see, all of these give me maximum hit points. That's where a lot of my hit points come from my companion as well. Moving on to mounts, I just use strictly Gladiator's Guile and Artifactor's Persuasion, just because I said movement speed on a tank is something that sometimes people sleep on, and I don't like to be that tank that's always in the back and everybody's waiting for him, because what's the sense then, man? If you're not the one at the forefront of the damage, taking the brunt of the force, man, you're not a tank. Unfortunately, you're not a tank. And you know, a tank is a hard role because you gotta get all the caps stat, you gotta have your income and healing, you gotta have your hit points, you gotta have movement speed. Like, there's a lot going on with a tank that some people just sleep on. In terms of Insignias, I have a couple refuge for critical avoidance. I have one evasion for deflection, and then the rest is just dominance, brutality. I have some prosperity for hit points. So as you guys can see, my Insignias are just kind of all over the place. Whatever stats you need is where I get from my Insignias, kind of deal. Especially at legendary, bro, they give 1,000 over $1,000 a piece, so you can kind of figure that into your build as well. In terms of the combat power, I just use a swarm. If nobody has a T-Rex, I'll use a T-Rex. If not, I'll use a swarm. Sometimes I just stay with the swarm because it does give us a 5% bonus increase, which as a tank, like I said, doing damage and holding that aggro. I have 25k hit points, which is the epic variation of the Triceratops. You have the legendary that gives 50k. So if you're a tank main out there, maybe you might need it. If not, you know, that's about it. I mean, other than that, guys, I do want to make a couple quick, little notes here as we about to wrap this up, and I kind of just go through my character sheets just in case you pause the video at some point and you can kind of just see what I'm rocking with. But the big thing as a tank, guys, and I want to just reiterate this, is just making sure you guys are keeping your stat caps. Now, this is a mod 18 build, but obviously if you guys are not ready for IC, drop it down to 80k. Tom, are you ready for Tom? 80k stats. If you're not ready for Tom, drop it down to Lam. 68k, So just depending on the dungeon you're running, make sure you reach the criteria of the stat caps. Lam, 68. Tom, 80. IC, 85. So that's just probably the basic way. Of course, as a tank, you're probably not going to be able to reach the combat advantage caps while maintaining everything else. Another thing you might be talking about is, well, Sonny, how many hit points is too many hit points? Well, honestly, I guess you can kind of say you can't have too many hit points realistically. But I guess at a point, I prefer doing more damage over hit points too. Because as you can see, that's pretty good. 136k right on the dot. I could take a couple potions and get this up, right? Pot it up. I'm at least, I just popped this one potion right here just to show you. It's the Caprice from the Summer Festival. I use that, and boom, my HP is over 800k. I joined a group. The VIP bonus puts me up to like 810, 815, around there. So that's plenty of HP, guys. 800k, that's enough to solo Tom. Income and healing, same thing. My income and healing is at 39 and I have no problem. So, once I get my tacticals maxed out, I'll even be better off with it. And, if they do fix the Mighty Vitality feat, there's more hit points there, guys. So there's a lot of things, as a barbarian tank that we can get shit ton of hit points. The big thing is stacking the hit points where you can. So radiance in your defense. Remember, you can't get hit points off your companions in your defensive slots, so don't even waste it. If anything, leave them empty. If not, put defense or critical avoidance or deflect. The only stat that you really don't need as a tank is awareness, and that is strictly for PvP. So don't even worry about that, guys. Other than that, it has been your boy Sonny here, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this tank build. If you have any more questions, leave them down in the comments below. But hopefully I got everything covered in this video. Until next